Well, hello everyone. Matt over at SFREP. Glad you could join me today. And today, for this webinar, we're going to be talking about buying a new computer and new technology. And if you've been thinking you want to upgrade your computer, maybe you want to upgrade it so you can run Windows 11. Maybe you have an older computer that the battery doesn't work quite as well anymore. Maybe it's just a little too slow. Then this is the webinar for you. It's not going to take very long. We're going to kind of go over the specs for your new computer, what we recommend for running Appraise-It Pro, and then we're going to take a look at some computers that are available out there on the market to see which one might be the best for you, balancing performance and price and availability. So the first thing we want to take a look at is going to be what we recommend for the specs for your new computer. And that is, we're going to be going over the processor, the RAM, the storage, the keyboard, which is very important, and then the different connections that are on the laptop. So the first one I want to go over is going to be the processor. We recommend an AMD Ryzen 5 or an Intel Core i5. Now the cool thing is that all of the processor manufacturers have kind of synced up their numbering schemes. So a Ryzen 3 is the same as a Core i3, a Ryzen 5 is the same as a Core i5. And the way you can think about this is in levels. So a Ryzen 3 Core i3, a level 3 processor, is mainly aimed at home users, kids in school, people that basically just want to write up some documents, or they want to surf the internet, maybe watch an occasional video on YouTube or something like that. The Ryzen 5 and the Core i5, the level 5 processors, they are aimed at business users and power home users. Above that, you have the Ryzen 7 and the Core i7. Those are aimed at power business users and gamers. And then the Ryzen 9 and the Core i9, those are aimed specifically at gamers. Okay. Now, generally, you're not going to find a Core i9 or a Ryzen 9 on anything other than a gaming laptop or a gaming desktop. And the type of computer that you're going to get, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, is of course going to be up to you. However, I will tell you that nowadays the value in the laptop is in the laptop space. Laptops have become way more popular. It's what people want, so they make more of them, so the prices come down. Desktops, especially brand new desktops, tend to be a little bit more expensive. Plus, of course, you're going to have to purchase a monitor with it as well. And the keyboards are usually pretty terrible. So are the mice. So you're probably going to buy those as well. So just keep that in mind. Now, the great thing about a desktop is they're generally quieter. They're probably a little bit more powerful, but they do use more electricity. And of course, you can't take it with you. And now with the advent of little USB-C docking dongles, you can basically use a laptop as if it's a desktop. So you plug this little USB-C plug into the laptop. It will then charge the laptop. Plus, you can break out and have multiple HDMI ports for multiple monitors. You can have multiple USB ports for your desktop type keyboard and mouse. So you can use it as a desktop when you're at home or when you're in the office, and then you can take it with you when you go out in the field. So what we recommend is that kind of mid-range there, that Ryzen 5 or the Core i5. Now, if you want, you can go with a Ryzen 7 or a Core i7, knock yourself out. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but sometimes you can find some really good deals. So get whatever you can afford, the highest end processor that you can afford. However, I will tell you that Appraise-It Pro will run just fine on a Ryzen 5 or a Core i5. It runs, as a matter of fact, my computer, my laptop for the company, my company laptop is a Ryzen 5. Works great. The main difference between the Core i5 from Intel and the AMD Ryzen 5, the Ryzen 5s tend to be slightly cheaper. They also tend to be slightly faster, which sounds weird that would be the case, but it is. And the Ryzen 5s also have way better graphics performance. The graphics processor that is built into that chip because it's all system on chip now. So the graphics processor and the main processor and the input output, all that stuff's on one chip now. And the one that's built into the Ryzen 5, it's from AMD. It's the AMD Radeon graphics, way better than what they have on the Intel. So I generally recommend the Ryzen, but the Intel Core i5 would work just as well. RAM, in the mid-range right now, you can expect to see 8 gigs of RAM. But 16 gigs is also starting to creep in on brand new computers in the mid-range. And if you tick up to the higher range, and we'll go over, what those are in a couple of minutes, you're starting to see 16 be the norm. So RAM, we recommend 8, but if you can get 16 or more, knock yourself out, do it. You can never have too much RAM. So get as much RAM as you can afford, but 8 gigabytes is more than enough. Do not cheap out and get one of these really cheap $200 computers that has 4 gigs of RAM and a processor you've never heard of. You're not going to like them. They're going to run terribly. They'll run Appraise-It Pro. They just won't run it very well. Next is going to be storage. I made this slide a couple of years ago. You're starting to see 512 gigabytes of solid state drive SSD storage creeping into the mid-range now, and it's definitely the norm on the higher end laptops. But 256 would be more than enough. I would say if this is going to be your desktop replacement computer, then I would go with the 512. But 256, especially if this is just going to be a laptop that you're going to use when you're on vacation or use out in the field, 256 is more than enough. Next is going to be the keyboard. And what I've put here is 10 key. And what I mean by that is you're going to want to make sure that the keyboard has what is called a 10 key or a number key. So let me see if I can pull my keyboard up here so you can see it. So there's my keyboard. It's upside down, but you get the idea. This right here, this is the 10 key. It's the number pad on the right-hand side of the keyboard. Generally, in laptops that are under 15.6, so 15.6 inch laptop screen size and above, you're generally going to have the 10 keys. Sometimes you won't, but most of the time you will. Below that, when you get down to the 14-inch laptops, they almost always do not have the 10 key. And that's going to be very important for you guys because you guys enter a lot of numbers. And you're going to want to have that number pad on there so that you can quickly enter numbers into your reports. The other thing that you want to be very careful about with a keyboard on a laptop is make sure that it feels good. So what I recommend you do is go to your local Best Buy, go to your local Staples, go to your local Office Depot, see these laptops on display. Now keep in mind, the manufacturers of these laptops, they use the same chassis over and over again. So there's probably going to be like 2 or 3 chassis out there. One of them, probably all of them, are going to be on display. So you can, try out the keyboard and then decide which specs you want to actually go with. But at least you can try out the keyboard. Now remember, when you type on it, it's going to be a different keyboard. So muscle memory is going to come into effect and you're not going to be as accurate as you are on the keyboard that you use every day. Remember that after about 2 weeks, you're going to develop new muscle memory and you'll be able to type really well on this keyboard. But what you're going to be looking for is press down on the keyboard and press down around the keyboard. Make sure it's not bowing too much. Make sure that you have good key clicks, good key presses. They call it key travel. So when you press the button, make sure that there's some physical feedback that you've hit that button and that it is going to register your key click. Okay. And then the final thing we want to look for is connectors and connections. You're going to want to make sure that it has USB-C on it. Almost all laptops, even in the mid-range now, at least have one USB-C port. In the upper range, you're seeing 2 and 3 USB-C ports. And a lot of times in the upper range, the charging cable is USB-C. So that does use up one of those USB-C ports. And then you're going to want to make sure it has some USB 3.1 ports. And then these are going to be the old style, what is called USB-A, the USB that we've had for 2 decades now. that's going to be important because there's still a lot of peripherals that you might use, like flash drives and things like that, that still use that old style USB-A port. So make sure you have at least one of those on your laptop as well, because you're going to probably be using it for, let's say, a mouse or a scanner or a printer or something like that. Although most printers now run off Wi-Fi anyway. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at a couple of laptops that are currently on sale. And by the way, all of those specs apply to a desktop as well. So we're going to take a look at a couple of laptops that are currently for sale on Best Buy. And what I've done here is I have done a filter here to show us AMD Ryzen 5 laptops, AMD Ryzen 7 laptops, Intel Core i5, and Intel Core i7. And once again, all of this also applies to desktops. It's just expect to pay a little bit more for your desktop. Just keep that in mind. Okay? Not always, but sometimes. So what this is basically showing me is it is showing me prices generally from the low to the high. Now, if we look at this one right here, this is the first one in the list. This is an HP 15.6. It is a touchscreen. Most laptops are touchscreens at this point. You're not going to really use the touchscreen all that much, but it's there. AMD Ryzen 5, so we're good there. 8 gigs of RAM, we're good there. 512 gigs of SSD storage. Like I said, that's becoming kind of normal on these mid-range and above laptops. And the color is natural silver. One of the things I used to really knock HP for is that they would have like a silver chassis or body, and then the keys would be silver as well. And I hate that because it makes it harder for you to see the keys. Now, this right here is solidly a mid-range laptop. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and get those questions in by using the chat. I want to go over this real quick. The chat is either going to be on the right-hand side of the screen, or it's going to be down along the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask those questions, okay? Let's see here. This is a solidly mid-range laptop. In the mid-range category, they're all going to share a couple of things, a couple of features, if you want to call them features. First of all, the body is more than likely going to be plastic, although sometimes these HPs, they have an aluminum top right here where the keyboard and everything is, but the rest of the laptop is plastic. That's somewhat advantageous, and they tend to be a little bit lighter, but they're not quite as durable, and they tend to get hotter because if you think about it, when you have an all-metal case, it's able to bond the processor and the cooling to the case as well and dissipate that heat out a lot better. So what you'll find is in these mid-range laptops, they're going to run that fan a lot more. So you're just going to be typing along, not really doing much of anything, and then all of a sudden this loud fan kicks on. And it's generally a lower end fan. It's going to be a little bit louder. And because that fan's coming on quite a bit more, it's also going to affect your battery life. So in the mid-range, they tend to be louder. They have the fan kicks on more. They tend to run hotter, and they tend to have a much less battery life. You also are not going to get backlit keys, and you're not going to get any type of thumbprint reader or, what they call it, Windows Hello. It's kind of like, what do they call it? Face ID on the Apple products. You're not going to find any of that. You'll probably also have a pretty terrible webcam, probably 720p or below. So, and a pretty bad microphone setup as well. So just keep that in mind. But if we look further down this list, if we go back to this list here, if we look further down, in these mid-range laptops, they will put some good specs inside the computer, but just keep in mind, it's going to be plastic. So here's a good example of that. We have an AMD Ryzen 7, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of SSD storage, all for under $500, right at $500. That's a pretty good deal. I've seen better, but that's a decent deal. But once again, this is going to be a mid-range. Now, how do you know it's a mid-range? If it's an HP, if it doesn't have a product line name. So if it doesn't say like EliteBook, or if it doesn't, doesn't have like a secondary name, it just says this is an HP laptop with a touchscreen, that's a mid-range. In the Lenovo space, and I love Lenovo, just a heads up, I'm a big fan of Lenovo. If you've never heard of Lenovo, they're based in North Carolina. Their computer division is. They're a Chinese company, but they're based in North Carolina. And they bought IBM's computer division back in 2005. So these are essentially IBM laptops. And in my opinion, they make the best laptops. Even in the mid-range, they have really good keyboards, and I really like their laptops. But still, mid-range laptop, $500, but you're getting good specs. But you're not getting any of those things I talked about. It's not all metal construction. You're not getting that backlit keyboard, thumbprint scanner, any of that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to scroll down here a little bit. Here's another HP. It's a Ryzen 5 with 16 gigs of RAM. And they'll often do this. They'll switch them out. So here you're getting more RAM but less storage. Up here you're getting more storage but less RAM. You'll find that quite a bit. But still, under $400 for a 15.6 inch laptop's not bad. Dell Inspirons. Those Inspirons are also mid-range. They're also made of plastic. I don't love Dell on the low end, by the way. Their high-end stuff is good, but their low-end stuff is not that great. If we keep coming down here, though, eventually we're going to hit, well, it kind of gets all over the place. But what I want to look at here, we'll do a Lenovo Yoga. I'm a huge fan of the Yoga laptops, especially the 16-inch version, which is what this is right here. So for $750, you're getting a Core i7 Ultra, 16 gigs of RAM, a terabyte of storage for $750. That is a screaming deal. And this laptop is going to come fully loaded. It's a 2K screen, so it's not 4K, but it's double 1080p resolution. So it is a 2K screen. And what that means is basically 1080p would have letter bars on the top and the bottom. So we're getting extra space on the top and the bottom. So it's more of a square than a rectangle. Beautiful screen, glass touch screen. So glass front on the touch screen. This body is all anodized aluminum. You can see it right there. That is a fingerprint scanner, backlit keyboard, and you're getting a 1080p webcam with, I think, the best speakers and the best microphones in the industry. Absolutely love these Yogas. And the cool thing about these Yogas is that they can be folded back on themselves so that you can, watch videos. You can even tent it. This is what I call tenting. And then you can put a external keyboard and an external mouse here and use it as just like it is a desktop. These also come with 2 USB-C ports and a HDMI. And then on the other side, you get 2 USB ports as well. And you can also fold it back on itself and use it as a tablet, but nobody ever does that. And they're kind of heavy when you do that anyway. It makes for a very heavy tablet. But as a actual laptop, they're stellar. And I can tell you the battery life on these things is absolutely insane. And this one's the Intel version. They also make AMD Ryzen versions of them as well. As a matter of fact, if I come down here, there's probably going to find one. There's a Core i9. That's overkill. Don't spend that for a computer. This is a 14-inch version of that same laptop. So we're the Intel Core i7 Ultra, 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage. It's the same laptop. It's now a 14-inch, which does make it more portable. But the laptop is going to, it's not going to have that 10 key, and it's going to have a smaller screen. And, I'm not the youngest person in the world, and I know you guys aren't either, most of you. Those screens are a little bit hard to see, in my opinion. The 16-inch, while it's a little bit more to lug around and it's heavier, it's so much easier to see the screen. So just keep that in mind. Let's see here. Now, you are going to run across these Copilot Plus PCs, and some of them, you will notice, are going to say Snapdragon X Elite. Now, what is that? Because that's not an AMD Ryzen, and it's not an Intel Core processor. So what's the Snapdragon Elite? If you have an Android phone, you've probably heard the Snapdragon name before. Okay, it's a set of processors that are put out by Qualcomm, and Snapdragon processors are based on what's called ARM. So essentially, this laptop has a souped up version of the same processor that would be in your phone or your tablet. And it's also kind of a version of what Apple is doing over on their end with their M-class processors, the M3, the M4. Those are also ARM-based processors. So they're souped up desktop, laptop class versions of what would be in a tablet, like an iPad or an iPhone, or in a variety of different Android phones as well. They're great, and that is the future of computing. You're already seeing it on the Apple side, and now you're seeing it crop in over here on the PC side. But beware, be aware that ARM processors, there's going to be some compatibility issues. Now, it's not with us. We're the only software package out there that is actually compiled to run natively on an ARM-based processor. So we work just fine with these Snapdragon X Elite processors. But if you have other software that you use, and anything from Microsoft, so Office is going to work on it as well. But if you have other software that you use, you may notice that it runs slower on these, and that is because Windows is having to emulate a Ryzen or a Core i processor in order to get your software to run, because it's a completely different platform of a processor. So just keep that in mind. I think in the next 5 years, most laptops are going to have these Snapdragon type ARM processors, but for right now, it's still kind of bleeding edge new technology. You're going to want to, keep that in mind when you're purchasing that particular type of laptop. But the great thing about these ARM processors, if you want to get one, you're not going to have 12 hours of battery life. You're going to be up in the 18-hour range, because one of the cool things about these ARM processors is that they are great at giving you a lot of computing power while sipping electrical power. So they're gonna run really well, and not drain your battery quite as fast. That's what they're made for. That's why they use them in phones. So, future of computing, you may want to not buy it yet, but it's coming, definitely. So you're going to find a couple of these Copilot plus PCs. All that means is that they have the Copilot, and that's what this is right here. They have the Copilot AI built into them, and so it's built right into the Microsoft Edge browser. You can ask Copilot a question, what is the population of Austin, Texas? And then it'll tell you. Takes a second. There you go. So these things are great. You can even have them, you can even have it make a photo for you. Now, I'm going to guarantee you, if any of you from Austin, this is not going to look like, it's going to look a little like the Austin skyline, but they'll get things wrong. It's kind of like a fever dream of what the Austin skyline is, but it can make really cool images. You can have it do really neat things. So that's what that is. And that's what that is that's going to have what's called a neural processing unit, or an NPU, built into the actual processor. So it makes that kind of stuff go faster. It can do it locally instead of having to send it off to a server. And when you're writing narrative appraisals, like you're going to be doing with UAD 3.6, that could be kind of helpful. You can use it. You can have it clean up your text and make it sound more professional, things like that. The other type is the HP Envy laptops. So we'll do HP Envy. That's kind of HP's version of the Lenovo Yoga. So it's going to be the Envy 2-in-1 16-inch. This is literally the same laptop, but from HP. This one is definitely not on sale at the moment, though, as you can see. But we can come down here and find one that is. Envy 2, this is a 14. Here's a 16. Oh, man. HP just doesn't have any of their stuff on sale right now. You can see all these are really high dollar items. So I wouldn't go on the high end with HP right now. And honestly, I would recommend a yoga over an HP any day of the week. Specifically, a lot of times these HP Envies, even on the 16-inch versions, they don't have the number pad. I don't understand why, but they don't include the number pad. So I don't really recommend it for you. Does anybody have any questions on things you're thinking about getting? One of the things I do want to give you for being a part of this webinar is I'm going to give you my telephone number, and this is going to be my office telephone number. When you call me, I may not answer. I'm often busy, but if you text me at this number, a lot of times I will answer you right away. And you can text me photos of things that you're looking at while you're at the store. If you want to ask me questions, or ask me if the salesperson is just, if they're being accurate or if they're just blowing smoke. I'll give you my telephone number if you want to get a pen and paper ready real quick. I don't put it on the screen because then it's just going to get passed around all over the internet and I'll start getting spam phone calls. But I'll tell you, it's area code 828-919-9082. That's 828-919-9082. And you can also email me with any questions you might have after the fact, training@sfrep.com, or you can use my direct email, which is matt@sfrep.com. So I don't have any questions, so I'm going to assume that you guys are just going to start looking for stuff and maybe contact me later if you have any questions, but I'll be happy to help you out. And if you have any questions on anything technology related, this is my hobby. I've been using computers since 1985. I absolutely love them. Any type of technology, I'll be happy to give you my opinion. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. I really appreciate it. You can always rewatch this by just going to our YouTube page and clicking on live. You can find this and other webinars that we've done and rewatch them. And if you have any questions on them, just like I said, feel free to email me directly, training@sfrep.com, or send me a text message, area code 828-919-9082. I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for taking time out of the end of your Friday to be with me on this webinar. And stay safe out there and stay cool, because it's starting to heat up here in Charlotte, and I'm sure it is everywhere else. So you guys have a great rest of your weekend.